Welcome to How to Trust Your Intuition, the podcast, the place where we learn that trust is earned and not given, even with ourselves. I'm your host, Betsy LaFay. I'm a social worker, turned award-winning psychic medium, turned intuition teacher. And my school, Trust Yourself Intuition School, celebrated its 10th anniversary in 2023. Join us each episode as we interview thought leaders and luminaries in every genre. They talk about how and when they learn to trust their intuition. Most say they're still learning. What happens when they do trust it and what happens when they don't. Stick around as we all walk together down the road towards trusting our intuition. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of How to Trust Your Intuition. Very happy to have you back. On today's episode, we have Leah Pardee. She is a manifestation mentor and breathwork facilitator. She hosts the Bare Naked Soul podcast and is the author of Confessions of an Uncaged Soul, plus 2 guided journals. She teaches women all over the world to overcome fear and live in alignment so they can manifest their most fully expressed lives. Her website is leahpardee.com and also her Instagram. I just finished our interview, and some of the things that I'm excited for you to hear is some more nuanced conversation about what manifestation is, about what happens when you, quote, manifest something that isn't in accordance with your highest good. Some of these conversations, I think, taken out of context, can do some real damage, but I really love the way Leah presents the information. Her energy is magnetic. And I really hope you enjoyed today's show.
My name is Leah Pardee. I'm a manifestation mentor and a breathwork facilitator and an author. I kind of have done so many different things along my journey and path with spirituality and manifestation and my business that involves all of that. Currently pregnant. I'm about 4 months in. On a personal note, yeah, that's about it.
That's wonderful. I'm actually glad you mentioned the pregnancy because I did see that on social media and I wanted to congratulate you, but it's not like it would be totally awkward, but as someone who's just meeting you, seeing it on social media, talking in a business context, so congratulations. I'm very happy for you. That was really, really awesome to see. Okay, so this is actually, I'm not asking, quote, for a friend. I'm asking for me, but also for the audience. When somebody, what did you say about manifesting? You're a manifesting coach. How did you put it?
Yeah, manifestation mentor.
Okay. So what does that mean for somebody who may not know?
So manifestation is really just bringing your goals and your dreams to life. Really, that's all that it is. But typically we talk about it in terms of the law of attraction. So we're using that spiritual realm. We're using the laws of the universe. We're tapping into our intuition and learning to trust that and follow its lead and be led to the decisions that are really aligned for us, that make it easier to create our dream life. So I help people get in alignment with their thoughts, with their emotions, with their beliefs, and then, of course, their actions to create what they want.
All right, I'm going to make a note because there's a question I want to know about that. But I first want to ask you, so you also are a breathwork facilitator and have a training program. Of course, our audience doesn't always know, but I also practice breathwork, especially in my school, Trust Yourself Intuition School. But I want to ask you, what type of breath work is it? Like what is involved?
So there's a lot of different types. I mean, I'm sure, as you know, there's so many different kinds of breath work. And I'm sure, as you also know, it's not as standard as something like yoga, where it's like everyone knows the names of the yoga poses and they don't really vary that much, unless maybe it's like the Sanskrit name versus the Western name. But with breath work, there's like so many different names for the same modality, right? And like people have coined their name with the type of breath work which is fine, but it's confusing to know the names. I really focus on conscious connected breath work. And so for people that have maybe done breath work where you're going to a class, a session, a workshop, at a retreat maybe, and you're lying down in this session, you're doing like a circular breathing rhythm for 20 to 30 minutes. And it's trippy. It's state of consciousness altering. You might experience visual things, emotions that come up. very deeply healing. And then I coupled that with other types of breath work. So yeah, lots of different modalities, but that's kind of like, to me, that's my favorite one to teach, I should say.
What's circular breath exactly?
So breathing in all the way, a big breath, breathing out all the way, a big breath, and it's in a circle. So the circular part is there's no pausing in between the inhale and the exhale.
Oh, okay.
So it's breathing in kind of in a loop. And some people will breathe in, some people will teach this modality where there's like 2 inhales or one different one, like into the belly, but it's the same kind of circular rhythm.
Okay. Yeah. That's more along the lines of what I practice with people. Yeah, it's interesting. Like people are like, what kind of breath work do you teach? And I'm like, it's just called breath work, you know? So I get it. That was a really good way to describe it. Well, I'd like to get into our questions. The first question of like, how and when did you get into learning about and trusting your intuition? But correct me if I'm wrong, because we know what assumptions do. But I would assume that there's some sort of connection or timeline connection between intuition and you getting exposed personally to manifestation work and law of attraction. And so I'd love to hear those two sort of, you don't have to exactly weave them together, but I do want to know your personal exposure to the manifestation and law of attraction. And I also want to know about intuition, but of course we know they're all related. So
Totally. Yeah. So my life looked so different. About 4.5, 5 years ago, I was working in corporate and really exceeding and doing really, really well, getting my MBA, doing all the things on track to, have like a high powered career. I was a sales manager, I ran a team, but I was incredibly stressed, incredibly anxious. And I thought this is just the way life is. You have a job, you're an adult, you're anxious. And some people take medication and some don't. This was what my understanding at the time. And there's nothing else you could possibly do. So that was, that was just, I really saw things at that time that they just were the way that they were. And I had some sort of personal responsibility or personal power, but it was limited. There's a lot of blaming other people and feeling like the victim to things, right? And so one day I stumbled upon the book, The Secret. And so that just blew my mind, that book, which is about the law of attraction and manifestation. And I just became so fascinated. I was like, how have I never heard of this? I was 26 at the time. I've never heard of this. So I just dove into the books and the teachings and the podcasts. And one day, it was like the beginning of January, I said, this month, I'm going to do journaling and meditation every single day. And I started with like 3 minutes at a time of meditations, just really bite-sized amounts. Because of course, it's very challenging to shut my mind at the time, was very hectic, lots of thinking all the time. And that month just really, really started to change my life. I started to notice I was feeling like happiness that was from within, that had nothing to do with outside circumstances. I was noticing I could like work through limiting beliefs in my journal and all these, and I was like reading the books to learn how to do all of this. So I started to connect to my intuition too. At that time, I started to learn what that really was and what that meant and how to tap into it. And so from there, I became a life coach and my whole business became a thing. And shortly around the same time, I found breath work, and then that became a big part of my life. But it was really like reading the book, The Secret, which is like so many people's like gateway into this, it's like typical.
So this question that I have about this is, again, it's definitely from me. It's like, there's like a pinch of like how I actually feel, but I also know it's like a thing in the manifestation world and in the world at large. So I'm sort of picturing sort of a distilled image, sort of just like, all right, we're archetypally going to go into this person's story. And maybe, let's say she's working with you and it's in the beginning of her like learning about manifestation. We have definitely the misnomer, which takes away all nuance, that says you're to blame for everything that happens to you, which also, side note, this has nothing to do with your work, by the way, but side note, that's what a lot of cults will prey on. They will have some kind of dogma that says, no matter what happens to you, it is your fault. So if I'm abusing you, it's your fault kind of thing, right? So that's an extreme. But in this case, she's maybe getting coaching from you. She's just learning. And I feel like I really loved when you said when you were working corporate that you were blaming other people for your situation and all of that. She's working with you and she says, like, I manifested that great date last night, but I still am 5K in debt. And that was because my last roommate didn't pay rent and I had to cover it. And they're still, wandering about, not taking responsibility. And now I have a late fee on my bank thing, right? So it's like, I know you as a coach would not be like, you're to blame for that. But like in terms of when you're teaching people about manifestation, like how do you handle and what do you talk about and how do you sort of massage in that nuanced way of like, well, yeah, like that didn't go so well, or you don't want that to happen. And like, what would you do with that example?
When I graduated with a BA in psychology in 2002, attachment work was only applied to children. Now, in 2023, it seems to be all the rage for a reason, because knowing your attachment type, there are three main types: avoidant, anxious, and secure, really changes your life. And if you listen to the podcast where I talked about how I lost $100,000 from a spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual coach, the silver lining to that experience was me discovering the root of a lot of my issues. I was anxiously attached. I had anxious attachment. At the very end of that terrible, terrible situation, yes, it was traumatic, I came across Maya Diamond's work. And it was working through her program that literally rewired my brain from anxious to secure. This is how I made it through all of my major transitions over the past 2 years and discovered so much about myself. Now, if you don't know about attachment work, don't feel bad. Here's a typical situation, in fact, the most common situation that happens with these attachment styles. Person A and person B are in a relationship. They care about one another. Person A reaches out to person B, doesn't hear back right away. So then maybe sends another text or another gesture, which further pushes person B away. Both people get resentful, and eventually they might break up. I was in that situation more often than I'd like to remember. I married the wrong person, I had toxic family relationships, and had no idea until I took Maya's program. So, the link for a free consultation is in the show notes, and I'm so happy to offer it all the podcast listeners. If you sign up for her program, you will get a free session worth $500 with Maya Diamond herself, one-on-one. That's just for How to Trust Your Intuition podcast listeners.
Yeah, that is such a good example and such an interesting question. Some people that teach manifestation, law of attraction, believe a little more so that everything in your life you created, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas I more so believe we're in charge of our lives, but things happen that are a result of living on this planet. So like if I get sick, it's because I am a human who decides to go around people and live a life and have jobs and I'm around, instead of being like, well, who got me sick? Mm-hmm. Like, who can I blame? It's like, this is part of being a human. Right. We have different experiences. We have encounters with people that maybe don't gel well with us, and terrible things happen because we're humans and we're here having this crazy, wild experience. Mm-hmm. So I really believe and teach that acceptance of what is really, really powerful. So it's not always about like finding out what we did to create the situation and blaming, essentially that would be blaming ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. Making it mean something that we messed up and we like whatever, this other person. the thing happened. Can we accept that? What's the alternative?
Right.
Being angry forever that it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm also a big believer in being angry and feeling your feelings and punching pillows and having a rage day and not suppressing your emotions, like feeling that, like feeling everything so fully, because again, it's all part of being a human. Angry that the roommate thing happened, you know, feel that, allow yourself that freedom to feel your emotions. And then can we move into what can we do now?
Right.
You know, if it's truly something we can't do anything about, the weather or, you know, things that we have no control over, what can we do with it?
Right.
What can we do now?
The weather is probably the best example.
Right, because yeah, it's totally out of our, you know, politics is a good one, but you can vote and you can, you know, but yeah, sometimes things just are. And accepting what is doesn't mean you suppress your emotions and usually bypass things.
Right. I
say,
mean,
oh, my parents abused me. I guess I don't have to, but I can't blame them. No, like feel it, talk it out, do what you need to do. And what can we do from here?
Yeah. That just, I mean, definitely feeling your feelings, speaking my language. I'm like, you know, I'm like, all right, I can chill, I can relax. That's great. I think, I mean, you did answer the question beautifully. I think it's just such a nuanced thing. And I think maybe my question, the angle that I'm coming from, I realized as you were talking, I was like, I think that people who would react negatively in that situation even come to the question from a negative perspective, right? They're just not ready for, I mean, they're not even really asking for help in that. They're sort of like looking for vindication that they're right. So I'm thinking about, I'll tell you the story because I think it's worthwhile, but way back in the beginning, so I've been doing this work for like close to 20 years now. Way back, I was living with roommates and it was in this like collective house. And there was this guy who I kind of distill it. There was one guy who was the black sheep who was blamed for everything. And then there was this one guy who was like this egomaniac and of course would blame the black sheep for everything. And it was actually very toxic and not very healthy. But the egomaniac guy, he completely like crushed his knee. His knee was like out of whack. And from my experience, especially with like doing readings and stuff, the knees represent the ego. Now, the ego's not always bad, right? Like we need the ego. But also we can have an inflated ego and that can turn toxic. And he had a twin sister and she was asking me, he wasn't, she was asking me as like an intuitive, whatever, kind of just open-ended conversation. And I was just like, well, he doesn't take responsibility for anything, if you notice. And what happened was his doctors had cleared him to be able to walk. And then he walked for like 2 steps and then messed up his knee again. And so I think most humans in that situation would be angry at the doctors, which is like understandable. And I was like, well, again, it wasn't him asking. I said to his sister, I was like, well, if he doesn't take inventory and sort of connect to these things, you know, and take some responsibility and change things, the same thing's going to keep happening. Right. And, you know, for better or for worse, again, it was like 2 decades ago, but she heard that as me blaming him for having the knee issue. Right. I mean, they were twins. So, but what was interesting about that scenario is, first of all, my intuition told me to move out into my own place, but before tensions got really, really strong. So I wasn't like running away from a bad situation. I was moving towards a better one. And it took a couple of months to make that happen. And in the meantime, the egomaniac decided to move out, which I just celebrated in spades. Because I was like, okay, that means I'm not taking that energy in a different form with me. But the black sheep decided to move out. And he was running away from something bad. It was bad, but he was escaping, trying to move to somewhere else. And he moved in with roommates that he didn't know, with a woman with the pretty much same knee injuries.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it's like, okay, right. Not a really good reason for me to celebrate that. Like, that's moving on. Because you never know, even though you're living by yourself, it could be the landlord, it could be the neighbors, it could be anything. So yeah, I think I really do like your approach And I think you're approachable in it. And I think once the person's ready, the teacher and the teachings will come. That's beautiful. I'm actually surprised that it was, not that long ago for you, just because I feel like you've just embodied the teachings so well. And that's a beautiful thing. Can you tell us about a time when you trusted your intuition? Most likely when, the deck was stacked against you, or when it was like anti-logic, and what happened?
You're all ready for your vacation. It's really hectic getting here, but you're seated in your airplane seat, looking out the window, and you hear the pilot come on the intercom. Good day, everyone. It's a beautiful day outside, 71 and sunny. As you're aware, to get to where we're going, we need to fly over that mountain range, and sometimes there can be a little bit of turbulence. I'm about 80% sure we'll get there safely. So buckle up, relax, and enjoy your flight. I know that sounds like an absurd situation, but when I put this in context of trusting yourself and trusting your intuition, and I ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most, how much do you trust yourself? 8 is a very high score when asking people. So if you fall on a 2 to 4 range, you're totally not alone. Now picture this other scenario. You're out to lunch with a friend, and the friend says that they've been having a really difficult time learning French. You ask the logical question, are you taking a class? And their answer is, well, I'm taking Spanish. Guess what? If you want to trust yourself deeply, if you want to have an easier time making decisions, break through blocks, connect with people, know who to connect with when, there's a class for that. I've actually helped thousands of people truly trust themselves in uncertainty, in times of doubt or fear, shame or guilt. And I have a free masterclass called Intuition 101, How to Trust Yourself in Uncertain Times, that will tell you everything you need to know in order to learn to trust yourself. The link is in the show notes. However, you can also go to howtotrustyourintuition.com, all spelled out.
So the biggest example for that comes to mind is definitely when I quit my corporate job, because I was really well paid. I had all the benefits of being, in a corporate job, and was doing really, really well there. But I was building my business on the side for like a year and a half or so, and working with clients every evening and working all weekend, like really, working 2 full-time jobs essentially. And it takes time to build a business, right? And like there's so many different like things involved when you make the choice to like leave a job for a business. And it's not like I had no money saved up. Like I did save up money really intentionally, but it wasn't a super logical decision. My husband wasn't really supportive of me leaving, but I just knew, like I knew so deeply. It was like the time I knew most deeply anything, like that I had to just make that leap. And yeah, I mean, it definitely worked. It definitely went well. Not that it's easy to be self-employed, and not that it just was an instant overnight success situation, because that's not real life for most of us. But yeah, I was really proud of myself for listening, because it just gets to that point where you just know, and I think we've all had those situations where we just know.
What I love about that story is actually the last episode that aired, the woman I was interviewing, she said, she was self-employed for many, many years, and then the pandemic hit and all this stuff, and she wound up getting a job, which, to many people's egos, we would have a lot of trouble with that. But she was really humble about it, and it brought a lot into her life, including more stability and all of that. And what we talked about in that episode is it's not something that I like purposefully intend for, but I do wind up helping, coaching, teaching people in your former position, right? Where you're like, have a day job, you want to make a transition to being full-time self-employed, all of that. And from what you shared and what I'm feeling from what you shared, it feels to me as though you were just doing everything you could to make it work, which I personally feel is the right attitude in those situations. But I think a lot of people, they have idealistically, like you said, to save up a lot of money, or they're running away from the terrible day job situation that they have, and it doesn't really mix well in terms of manifestation wise. But that was a similar situation with me as well, that I was a social worker for over 10 years, and I had my full-time self-employment work, and I also had a TV show on public access, so I was juggling a lot. I did not have enough clients to support me in my, business, but it was time. I just had to. I absolutely had to. And I think it's almost sort of a form of initiation, I feel like. And not to say to the listeners that like every time you take a leap like that, it will work out. Like it's got to come from that knowing place, That's really, really beautiful. I'm glad to hear that. Now, how about an example when you didn't trust your intuition, you didn't follow it, and what happened as a result?
Yeah, I feel like this happens all the time. I feel like it's, even like driving, you'll be like, okay, I know I need to make this turn, but I just don't. Like, right, just like it's so easy to talk yourself out of following your intuition. And it's hard to differentiate intuition from ego and fear and all the things. But I think for me, it would also be like an example within my business would be just like when I knew I wanted to start a podcast, but I waited and waited and waited and waited, right? Same thing when I wrote my book. I talked myself out of it twice, or I started writing the book and then talked myself out of it. The timing wasn't right, was what I told myself. It was just fear. That's all that it was fear and not listening to my intuition. So yeah, I think it led to a lot of just delaying my desires.
Yeah. Does it, when you're working with people, first of all, I love that answer of like, it happens all the time, because I think that's truth. I think that's just truth. When you're working with someone and they're delaying their desires, and of course it is fear related, do you see any sort of patterns that people are breaking out of at those times?
Yeah. One of my favorite things to work on with people is looking at the self-sabotage patterns. Where do you tend to give up? When do you tend to change your mind about your desires? And what are the thoughts and beliefs that tend to be there in those times? And of course, I have my own self-sabotage patterns, right? That I can look back and be like, oh, now I see. But yeah, I love it because it generally is a pattern. And it generally is, we have the same excuses that our mind will tell us, right? That we tend to go back to a playing small mindset, or just kind of getting into like a settling energy. It tends to be like a repeated pattern of self-sabotage. I love helping people find that.
You're just like, my mind is all like, woo, it's all like rolling around here being like, that's great. It's really great. When you talked about like wanting to start a podcast and all of that, it just brings me back to, this was like 2011, 2012, something like that, when I was on NPR's Planet Money. And just side note, it was a really long interview, and I knew so much about economics at that time because I was just really interested in listening to a lot of stuff. They did not expect a psychic medium to know all about economics, so they just wanted a soundbite. And they did have a soundbite, and at the end they say, so like, what's your prediction for what's going to be popular or whatever in the future? And I literally said podcasts. And they didn't believe it, right? Because it was just like, whatever, like this is just the beginning of whatever. But at the time I had intended to start a podcast. And I think there's even something to this day on the episode that's like, okay, so look out for mine, that's coming out. And it took me until, I guess, like 3 years ago now to really get this off the ground. Not that it's not linked to self-sabotage, but for me, I mean, it's relatively classic. Having so many gaslighting abusers in my life, which now they're not there. But I was just surrounded by them in totality that, if I brought up a dream, it would be squashed for sure. And then it got to the point where I didn't even need to bring up a dream because it wouldn't even leave my mouth. I would just self-sabotage. I would self-gaslight. I would push it down. And it actually wasn't until, it's almost like my forever work at this point, at least in this body. It was like earlier last week when I was doing my own reading for me, tuning into what's good for me. And it was just like, wow, you are a whole person. And now that the slate has been wiped clean, like not only are no abusers pinging you, but you get to make new friends and family and acquaintances. And so it's almost like I'm a newborn and I can express whatever, whenever. Of course, there's worldly consequences, but there aren't any relational consequences. And it is, my initial thought would be that it would be kind of scary or intimidating, right? Like the sky's the limit. Wow, like decision fatigue, kind of overwhelm kind of thing, but it's not. It's just like, all right, if you were an infant in the world, what baby steps would you share? So it's definitely a reorienting for me, but an exciting process for sure. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that analogy of like being an infant, because it is like when you kind of have the spiritual awakening, then it's like you're relearning everything, you're observing everything from this different perspective with these different set of glasses on.
Yeah. It's been really comforting to me because I'm still studying cult survivors and all of that, because I am a cult survivor. I'm from many different places. And I heard Leah Remini, the outspoken Scientologist woman, she even said in a podcast recently that she feels like, not in any corny way, but that she's been reborn. My life is very, if you haven't seen the show, but it's very like Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, where like, she was in a bunker for her whole life, and then she comes out and it's like, what's pizza? Like someone could sell her a pizza for $300 and she wouldn't know. She would think it was a good price, and that's very much, even just a year ago in therapy, my therapist was, we were celebrating. She was just like, even a year ago, you came into a therapy session and you're like, this guy asked for my number and I have no idea why. It's completely true. I was like, I literally asked him, like, so when am I supposed to call you? Like, what are we going to do? Like, what's the reason to call you? And she was like, Betsy, he wants to sleep with you. And I was like, oh, right. I'm 43 now. So I was 42 when I learned this. And so it's like, great. Like I do believe like every 6 months I age a year. So I'm going on 4 now. I'll be 4 in the summer. It's very appropriate. A lot of naps, a lot of good food. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I would love to know about your breathing training that you have so that I can know, the audience can know.
Yeah, so it's called Heal Breathwork Academy. I've been running this program for almost a year and a half now. Yeah, and I teach people to become certified breathwork facilitators. So it encompasses several things. I really put together kind of what I felt was missing from a lot of programs that I've done, where there's the teaching, of course, like, yes, teach me the thing, but then how to apply it. I feel like a lot of people become certified and they leave not really knowing what to do next. So we really focus on obviously learning breath work, the history, the science, how it actually works, how it heals us, learning to teach the modalities, but then also how to become confident as a facilitator, how to confidently promote your services and sell them to the world, and different ways you can do that, different places you can teach breathwork at. And so then I also provide my I have a membership program for breathwork called the Breath Portal, which is included with the program. So that's like a library of pre-recorded sessions of me teaching breathwork that you can go in and dive into your own breathwork sessions and really like become deeper in your own experience of it, so you can share from your own experience and transformations. So
that's great. That's really, really great. I'm going to be teaching breathwork tonight and trust yourself. So that's great. Wonderful, wonderful news. All right. Well, if people wanted to find you, work with you, where would you send them?
I would send to Instagram at It's Leah Party.
Mm-hmm.
And my podcast is Bare Naked Soul.
Great.
And you can just type my name in anywhere. I'm the only person that comes up on all the things. So
I love that. That's great. And we'll leave that in the show notes as well. Well, this has been a breath of fresh air, pun intended. I really, really thank you for showing up here today. And this is just the beginning. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Betsy.
How to Trust Your Intuition, the podcast, is written, produced, and created by me, your host, Betsy LaFay. Music provided by Ben Talmy. If you don't want to be like that pilot that is 80% sure you'll get to your next destination safely, and you want to take the right class to learn the right language, and guess what? Intuition is a language. Head over to howtotrustYourIntuition.com. I hope this podcast has been helpful to you. If it has, please forward it to a friend who you think it could also make a difference for. There's something that you can do for me and everyone else who listens to this podcast as well. If you hit subscribe, you'll never miss another episode. It'll also help the show get to other people. And of course, I know you've heard other podcast hosts say this before, but it's totally true. If you leave us a 5-star rating and a review, it helps other people like you discover this podcast. We all need to learn to trust our intuition. So, hit subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and write a little blurb while you're there. Your intuition will thank you.